Well, my friends, our farmers are in full-blown crisis, and it's not because of Mother Nature. It's because of Donald Trump's reckless tariffs that have torched decades of trade relationships and handed America's agriculture future to China and Brazil on a silver platter. 12,000 tons of pork canceled. Soybean exports collapsed, and family farms are now shutting down. And it doesn't stop there. Longshoremen, truckers, warehouse workers, entire communities are being gutted. This didn't have to happen, but Trump wanted a trade war. He wanted headlines, and now our farmers are paying the price while China laughs its way to the Brazilian soybean fields. And to make it worse, farmers who sign contracts with their own government, they're being stiffed, left holding the bag. So let me be clear. I will fight like hell to rebuild our rural economy, restore fair trade, and make sure American farmers never again become pawns in a MAGA publicity stunt. This district deserves better. America deserves better. Are you ready to fight back?
Well, the latest blow to farmers, specifically farmers in Kansas, is going to be wheat. Wheat. When Doge and Trump killed the program that sent 4 billion people in 150 countries around the world, 80% of farmers in this area voted for Trump. The projected agricultural deficit, you heard me, deficit from the USDA predicted for 2025, including wheat, is $49.5 billion deficit to agriculture. This includes farming and cattle ranching. Why did these farmers vote Republican? Did you know that Trump did the same thing to them in his first term? Tariffs are a tax paid by the person who brings it in and then passed on to the consumer. If the other country puts a reciprocal tariff on us, that costs us money. Tariffs are a disaster.
It's time to talk about some hard truths. Just got off the phone with a farmer, and we had a conversation about the one big, beautiful bill. The bill has farm aid provisions, policies that farmers need, policies that should have been passed in a farm bill 3 years ago. We haven't gotten a farm bill. These provisions have been stuck into the one big, beautiful bill, which is about the size of the last Harry Potter novel. Let's be clear. Without these provisions, many farms will fail. Same way that I did this spring. Early estimates say we may have lost 15% of all farms this year. We could lose as many as 50% more if nothing is done. And believe me when I say I feel that deeply, intimately. It is wrong that the people who grow food in this country cannot make a living. They have been pushed to the very edge financially and mentally. It seems that the only way they can get any relief is to cram needed farm provisions into a massive partisan package. We have been put between a rock and a hard place. Not just farmers, families. And that makes me madder than hell. One big, beautiful bill is bad business. It's forcing us to make impossible choices. And that's not fair.
Hello from China. So I'm in a grocery store right now, and I wanted to show you how the American tariffs are affecting Chinese customers. So I was going to get some beef for dinner tonight, and I saw this. So what used to be here is American beef, but now, as you can see, it says Australian beef. And I did look around. I couldn't find one single pack of beef from America. So I guess China just stopped buying beef from America, and it went straight to Australia. So the whole idea that China is hurting because of the American tariffs, well, they're not, because they're not as dependent on the US. In fact, only 18% of Chinese imports come from America. And for stuff like beef and soy, they can just go somewhere else easily. So I guess I'm having Australian beef for dinner tonight instead of American beef. And honestly, because of the food quality, I probably trust Australian beef better. And this box of beef right here is 50 RMB, which is about $7 US. So to answer the question, China ain't hurting. And if anything, I think we're probably doing even better because now that we are better beef that tastes better and at a better price. So thank you, Trump, for that.
So y'all ready to talk about Acre Trader now? You didn't know Acre Trader is a company that invests in farms that are failing. And considering that most of our farms are going to be failing soon because they're going to lose their subsidies from the federal government, it's interesting that the number one donor into this company is none other than JD Vance. Isn't that weird? Basically, Acre Trader allows private investors to invest in failing farms and buy up the land together as a team, you know? Get together with your buddies. And good old JD Vance, yep, he heavily invested in this Acre Trader. I'm sure pulling the federal funds away from farmers doesn't have anything to do with that. That would be crazy, right? Like, why would the vice president invest in a company who was going to spend money to grab up farmland and take away their federal farming money so that way they could lose their farms? That would not. Come on, guys. Don't be ridiculous.
Something, you point them out to me. People who already couldn't afford fresh vegetables, who couldn't already afford to put good food on their plate, are the ones that are really going to be hurt by this.
Did you ever think when you voted for President Trump that things were going to cost you more and you're going to lose money?
I never thought I was going to lose this much money this fast.
Jim is a Republican who voted for Donald Trump 3 times.
How do you feel about your vote for Donald Trump now?
Well, I feel like perhaps I should have considered some other options.
Among other things, Jim imports packaging supplies for his honey, so he's paying real close attention to the tariffs Trump just put in place.
We just bought our year's supply of bottles from Taiwan and our year's supply of corks from Portugal about 3 weeks ago. So that would have been, another $5,000 or $6,000 out of my pocket.
Which is partly why he's repairing instead of replacing this 40-year-old forklift.
The cost of equipment has just gone through the roof to buy anything like that because it just would be cost prohibitive.
He's also holding off on improvements around the farm.
Well, we're not going to hire any more people, that's for sure.
It's more than just the tariffs. For the past 2 years, Jim has been selling honey to the federal government, which then provides it to schools and food banks. But after Donald Trump took office, the USDA cut those programs suddenly as part of the federal government's effort to streamline spending.
For a lot of other local farmers around here, it was a major source of reliable revenue. For me, it's going to cost me around $150,000 a year.
$150,000?
Yeah, roughly 50% of my revenue.
That's a huge hit.
That's a massive hit.
I'm Hallie Schaffner. I'm a 6th-generation Arkansas farmer and candidate for U.S. Senate running to unseat Tom Cotton. Arkansas is the top rice-producing state in the country. But most of what we grow is just your long-grain, average white rice that's processed and sold cheaply. But what about specialty rice? Basmati, sushi rice, purple and red rice that's high in antioxidants and better for you. My idea is, what if we grew value-added rice that gave farmers more profitability and consumers healthier choices? So that's what I did. Sorry, I'm walking in like a couple of feet of water. And here we are, 2,500 acres in Arkansas and Mississippi, where we'll actually make farmers money. This is what my campaign's about. Challenging the status quo. It's about prioritizing people, all business owners, and giving consumers choices. Because that's what we deserve. We deserve an economy that works for everybody. We got to start thinking outside the box. Let's do things differently and change the world for the better.
I'm a 6th-generation farmer from Newport, Arkansas. I grew up farming next to my parents, who are here today. I have, in their retirement for the past 10 years, been the primary operator of our farm, which is 2,000 acres of soybeans, corn, rice, and wheat. But what I should say today is that I used to be a 6th-generation farmer. In February, we made the decision to close our farm. We joined many other farming families making this heartbreaking choice to avoid significant financial strain, financial hardship before it was too late. Many more families like mine will make similarly hard choices this month, in the next few weeks. The ag economy is the worst it has been since the farm crisis of 1980, when the U.S. lost 1 in every 4 farms. And that's because the price we're paying for the crop we produce is so low, and the cost to produce that crop is so high that not a single commodity crop in Arkansas is profitable for farmers. Because agriculture is such an important economic driver in the United States, and because food production is a national security issue, the government steps in tough times to help farmers. Yesterday, I watched strangers pull away my tillage equipment. They drove my tractors away, my combines, they loaded my power units and my fuel tanks onto trailers. Today, as I stand here, people are picking up the very last pieces of 6 generations of farming, and the people that we elected to protect us are eating in a ballroom at $7,000 a plate. I don't care whether you have an R or a D next to your name. I have no use for politicians that play dress up in cowboy boots and say they care about farmers and then do nothing in our hour of need. I don't necessarily have an ask for the people here, but I think y'all should know what's happening in farm country in Arkansas. Vote them out! And I think
You guys aren't going to believe this shit. I'll make it fast, but stay to the end for the kicker. You remember the last few years when you could not find a single family home, and if you could, you probably couldn't afford it because you had corporate interests like Zillow and BlackRock. They were coming in, heavily investing in the real estate market, wiping the single family homes off the market so the average person could not even buy one. Fast forward to this week, I'm sure you've seen the story of the Missouri farmer, the young guy who was at risk of losing his farm because the grant that he was going to receive to reimburse him for all these expenses he had been cut. Well, look, they've also cut U.S. aid, which gave farmers millions and millions of dollars because they would buy their crops and then send them overseas or send them, places here in the United States to help people in need, but it also helped the farmers. Well, I found out today that there is a website called Acre Trader. Acre Trader is a company that heavily invests in agricultural land. So you can go invest in these farms that are failing, that somehow they're just starting to fail, and you can just buy them up. Well, guess who heavily funded Acre Trader? JD Vance. Do you think they're out here just destroying these small farms so they can buy them up, all these tech bros? Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Economy. Houses aren't selling very fast. Okay? Building has slowed down. The job market is crap. Okay, he fired all these people. The job market is crap. Okay, I know that because I'm trying to get a second job. Also, what else going on? Like I said, the businesses aren't making any money. You hear them on TV. They say the tariffs. 1 minute the tariffs are up. 1 minute the tariffs are down. The businesses don't know what to do because they're trying to buy the products, and sometimes they gotta pay twice as much or whatever. Businesses ain't making no money. The farmers are filing for bankruptcy. Okay, I'm talking about the real economy, not the lies that the administration wants to come up with and, say everything's going good. Furthermore, the food prices are still high. Yeah, let's talk about the real state of the economy, not the fake one that the secretary, when she gets on TV, she said everything's going good. Well, ask the farmers, ask the business people. And then, because they're not speaking up, some of them, they just gonna praise him to the end. But reality is people are losing money. People are still losing jobs. Okay? That's the reality of the economy. It sucks.
And this is why small town farmers don't do nice things anymore. We had our cute little egg stand out. Only charged $4 for our farm fresh eggs. All of our money went back to our chickens for treats or stuff to make their lives better. And somebody decided that our metal cash box was worth breaking off the screws and stealing. And then to make it even worse, we left our egg stand out while we ran errands, and then somebody stole our last 24 eggs that we had in there. So that's why small town farmers, they quit doing this, because stupid shit like this. We live in a small town. We thought it'd be nice out here, but we can't even have our cute little egg stand out here without it being broken into. So
Yeah, take a look at this. I live in Iowa. More farmers filed for bankruptcy in the first 3 months of 2025 than all of 2024. And you wonder why? Maybe tariffs. But you wonder what the solution might be to this? I want you to read this. Farms filing for bankruptcy under Chapter 12 of the Federal Bankruptcy Code, which gives farmers and fishermen a chance to restructure their operations and plan to repay all of their debts. What does this sound like familiar? I know a lot of people on here are younger than me. But there was a farm crisis back in the 80s where, all these people swooped in, these banks swooped in and said, here, we'll let you restructure your loans. Don't worry, we'll give you this new loan, restructure the one that you have with impossibleness to be able to pay this back. So they took those farms, and guess who's going to benefit? Corporate agriculture. And if you didn't know already, if you haven't heard this, J.D. Vance is part owner or started this company several years ago called Ag Trader, which buys up distressed farms. That's convenient, isn't it? So let's put the president in place who ruins everything and makes these small farmers go under, and the vice president has a hold on a business that gobbles up all those farms that are in crisis. Convenient, I'd say.
4 years ago, they were crying because they couldn't afford their student loans. It's kind of strange, because if you're an expert in finance and you got college educated on finance, wouldn't you think you could take care of your finances in your own house?
I don't know, shouldn't you be able to handle your own finances without constantly relying on Dems to give you handouts and bail you out? Recognize this guy? This is a perfect example of why people make FAFO content. This is a perfect example of why regret is not the same as redemption. You may remember this guy from a video where he was crying about losing his farm because he spent a bunch of money he didn't have because he was banking on receiving certain subsidies that he was promised thanks to the Biden admin. And then when Trump got into office, the guy he wanted, and put a freeze on all the aid that was going out, including the aid going to American farmers like himself, he suddenly had a problem with the whole endeavor. People, of course, understandably dragged him, made a bunch of FAFO content, and then he came out and asked people to stop, kicking him while he was down, that he was here to listen and to learn, and that he didn't know about all this Project 2025 stuff. He'd had the wool pulled over his eyes. But now he's in pain. He's afraid for his farm. He's willing to hear people out. And in fact, it sparked a conversation where people were saying, let's embrace these people who are regretting their choices and let's speak to them because clearly they want to learn. I'm not going to say that everyone who has regrets doesn't want to learn. What I'm saying is that having regrets does not mean that someone has learned. Having regrets about doing something that would harm a lot of people simply because you're now being harmed, that's not a lesson. You're still operating completely out of self-interest. You have not learned anything. So what happened? Well, a bunch of people who have been pushing against this administration and all the havoc it has been wreaking, all the destruction it is causing, sued the admin over those frozen funds and successfully got those funds unfrozen, at least temporarily. So this learning and listening farmer got his funds released. Now he's fine. What do you think? Did he learn a lesson? Nope. He's now back to going after everyone else. He's now back to not listening to people when they're explaining how tariffs are going to harm the economy. For example, he's now making fun of people who took out student loans. If they're bad with their finances, what are you, dude? What are you? What is your farm if it cannot exist or survive without Dems bailing it out all the time? Yeah, when things get bad for you again, no one's going to be fooled when you claim to be listening and learning. Next time it's time for you to find something out, we're going to know. If you're not out there working to undo the harm that you caused, I'm sorry. Your regret is not redemption.
I love our farmers. As you know, in our tax bill, we have a clause that's very important. We were losing a lot of farms to the banks because a loving mother and father would die and left their farm to their children, or their child, but their children, their family. And they loved their family, and they thought they were doing them a favor, but they had a 50% tax to pay. So the land would get valued, and at a high number, because some of the farms were valuable, but they didn't, they couldn't quantify it. And they'd go out and borrow money to pay the estate tax, or the death tax, as it's called. And they'd overextend, and they'd lose the farm.
American farmers aren't quitting. They're dying. We lose more than 300 farmers to suicide every single year in the United States. That's more than double the national average. Not because they fail, but because the system is designed to crush them. Percy Schmeiser didn't buy Monsanto seeds. Wind blew GMO pollen onto his land. They sued him anyway. That's how broken this is. You don't even own the food you grow if it's patented. USDA agents raided an Amish farm at gunpoint. Why? Raw milk. The public seed library in Missouri was shut down. Why? No barcodes. You think you're free to farm? Try selling beef without USDA approval. Try saving your seeds. Try skipping vaccines for your livestock. Try doing it your way and watch what happens. This isn't about food safety. It's about control. Control the seeds, control the food, control the food, control the people. And that's exactly what they're doing.
They didn't need a torch to destroy black farms. All they needed was a stamp that said loan denied. In the 20th century, black farmers were growing food, building wealth, and owning land, despite every obstacle. But then came the U.S. Department of Agriculture. For decades, the USDA intentionally denied black farmers loans, grants, and disaster relief that white farmers received with no issue. They delayed paperwork. They withheld checks. They watched farms go under and did nothing. Between 1920 and today, the number of black farmers dropped by 98%. Let that sink in. This wasn't bad luck. It was deliberate destruction. Still think it's just about working harder? Even after lawsuits proved discrimination, most black farmers received nothing. Some were forced to sell. Others lost land passed down for generations. Why don't we call this what it is, economic warfare? How different would rural black America look today if the USDA had done its job? And should the government pay out real reparations to surviving black farmers? Follow and share if you're tired of hearing "just apply" when the system was designed to say no. Drop a farm emoji if this made you furious. Comment "stolen harvest" if you felt this one deep. Follow and share so the silence doesn't win.
Oh, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is big mad right now because her and the state of Arkansas are getting exactly what they voted for. Because you see, last month, 14 tornadoes touched down in the state of Arkansas, devastating multiple counties, destroying businesses, and sadly taking the lives of 3 people and injuring dozens of others. But you see, the state of Arkansas also voted for an administration that wanted to leave disaster relief up to the states. So I'm not even sure why you guys applied for relief funds, but you did, and you were denied. All right, they said it was nothing outside the realm which your state and local agencies could handle. So I don't know what they're seeing that you're not, but it might be time for you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get to work. Your state depends on you. You're the one who led the way, telling them that this administration was going to be great for your state and your country. I don't know. I voted for federal relief fund, okay, because I don't want your state to suffer. But hey, you voted for hate, and those 15 people can't play field hockey now. So I guess it was worth it in the long run. Good luck.
55%. That's the rate that American farmers have been declaring bankruptcy over and above last year. 55% more bankruptcies of American farmers. And it's the conditions, the economic conditions that are contributing to it. A lack of a workforce, a lack of labor, tariffs, I mean, the whole 9 yards. You know, everything this administration has done is contributing to these people losing everything. They're losing the farm, right? So why is this important? Why should you care? Well, what happens when a family declares bankruptcy is that their property is sold in a sheriff's auction to satisfy creditors. So they lose their property. It's fire sailed. And, you know, if they've got a $1 million loan on the 1,000 acres they got, and they get $500,000 for the property, well, they're on the hook for another $500,000. We're talking about generations that have farmed land, that have been farmers their entire lives, losing everything because they can't sell a product overseas. I mean, most of our corn and grain is sold to other countries, and the tariffs are making it more expensive than other options. So they can't sell what they've farmed for decades or centuries. So what's the end run here? Why is this happening? Well, my speculation is that there's large, massive farming operations out there, very large corporations that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of acres. For example, the King Ranch. And 25 years ago, they had 1 million acres and several 100,000 head of cattle. And they're looking to expand. So how do you expand cheaply? Well, what you do is you get somebody to pass legislation that's going to make family farms file bankruptcy. And then instead of giving them fair market value for it, you can just buy the land in foreclosure. So, well, out of bankruptcy. So that's the end run here. That's what all these policies are doing, is simply gutting family farmers to allow corporations to get farmland cheaply. It's a shame. It's sad. It's shameful. But that's what this administration is going for, you know? Line the pockets of the big corporations, the big farmers, and shaft us.
Thank you for watching Great Minds Blacks.